Mr. Lewis, orders of the day.
Private members' business. The second reading, first time debated, of Bill C-241, an act to amend the Income Tax Act, deduction of travel expenses for tradespersons, standing in the name of Mr. Lewis, Essex.
Mr. Lewis, Essex, seconded by Mr. Lawrence, moves that Bill C-241, an act to amend the Income Tax Act, deduction of travel expenses for tradespersons, be now read a second time and referred to the Standing Committee on Finance. Debate. The Honourable Member for Essex.
Well, thanks so much, Madam Speaker, and let me just start off by saying what an absolute honour it is. Completely privileged beyond belief, kind of mind-boggling, because it's one thing just to get to this House, Madam Speaker. It's another thing to be fortunate enough to be so early in the private member's business. So it really, truly is quite a remarkable day. And not just a remarkable day for me, Madam Speaker, but perhaps for some, close to 1 million trades workers across Canada. Perhaps just a really, really remarkable day. Madam Speaker, I would like to first say thank you to the folks of Essex who elected me to represent them. Without their support, I certainly wouldn't be here in this place today bringing this private member's bill forward, Madam Speaker. Secondly, I'd be very remiss if I didn't say thank you to Tommy Hulkinen. He's from UBC Local 494 from Windsor, Madam Speaker, and I know when I ran the very first time here for this place to be the representative for Essex, he asked me to bring this private member's bill forward. Apparently he's been working on this for some 11 or 13 years. And so I gave him my word, Madam Speaker, that if indeed I was elected, and if indeed I was up early enough in the pre-PMB process, I would bring this bill forward. And so I'm proud to bring it forward, and I'm proud that I could actually keep my word for Tommy, Madam Speaker. And so, Madam Speaker, my bill, the People's Bill, the Trade Workers' Bill, Bill C-241, is an act to amend the Income Tax Act, specifically a deduction, not a tax credit, a deduction of travel expenses for tradespersons. I also like to call it the Fair Traveling Tradespersons Bill. And Madam Speaker, I get 15 minutes to talk, and I've probably already used up a minute and a half. But, Madam Speaker, it's a very, very simple bill. It really is. It talks about three things. Where the taxpayer was employed as a duly qualified tradesperson or an indentured apprentice, a construction activity at a job site that was located at least 120 kilometers away from their ordinary place of residence, amounts expended by the taxpayer in the year for traveling to and from the job site if the taxpayer does three things. Was required under the contract of employment to pay those expenses, did not receive an allowance in respect of those expenses that is not included in computing the taxpayer's income for that year, and finally does not claim those expenses as an income deduction or a tax credit for the year under other provisions of this Act. And so I need to tell you, Madam Speaker, through this process, I've spoke to a number of trade associations, a number of trades unions, the managers of such, the leaders of such, and I am yet to find one, Madam Speaker, that does not completely endorse this bill, which tells me, Madam Speaker, there's a huge void that needs to be filled, and it tells me, Madam Speaker, that we've been walking by an opportunity to support trades and trades folks. Madam Speaker, by 2025, Ontario alone will need an additional 350,000 tradespeople to fill just the current need. And as often the case, Madam Speaker, tradespersons can be expected to travel long distances from one job to the next, far from home. With inflation at a 30-year high and during the ongoing cost of living crisis, this bill is a common sense proposal for hard-working Canadians. And when it comes down to it, this legislation is just basic fairness for tradespeople. I made a commitment, Madam Speaker, to the tradespeople in my riding to bring it forward, and that's exactly what I'm doing. Madam Speaker, because this bill is, in my opinion, quite frankly, so simple, I want to tell a few stories of the folks that I've been speaking to along the way. because I really believe that through their stories, it brings out the magic of what this bill will do for everyday Canadians and their families. And so, first and foremost, Madam Speaker, I want to speak to Canada's building trade unions. And they've been very good in helping me kind of just navigate through, or stick handle through, if you're a Canadian hockey player, I suppose, what exactly is needed. So CBTU represents members who work in more than 60 different trades and occupations and generate 6% of Canada's GDP. Their industry maintains and repairs more than $2.2 trillion in assets. Their work is not just done on site, but in facilities that provides modules or other components that are incorporated into the larger structures that they work on. And once those structures are built, Madam Speaker, they are employed in their renovation, maintenance, and repurposing. And so they go on to say getting people to work. And this is a really neat one. Depending on private and public investments at different times, and this is really, really an important point, certain regions will have more employment opportunities than others. These conditions lead to a necessity for skilled trades workers to temporarily relocate or travel long distances to projects to meet the needs of the market. As projects are completed, workers will then return to their permanent residence. With families to support, temporary relocation costs can prove to be burdensome for workers, contributing to increased reliance on programs like unemployment insurance, while exacerbating labor shortages in certain regions. As the Canadian economy transitions to net zero, Madam Speaker, the federal government needs to implement travel supports for workers in the traditional oil and gas sector. They go on to talk about addressing inequality in the Income Tax Act. And they go on to say, in its current form, the Income Tax Act is an inequitable tax policy. Today, and this is a very important point, Madam Speaker, today, salespeople, professionals, and Canadians in other industries can receive a tax deduction for the cost of their travel, their meals, and their accommodations when traveling for work. The same option is denied to skilled trade workers who work on job sites that are in different regions or provinces from their primary residence. A few stories, Madam Speaker, and these are real stories. Emails. The following is an example of an apprentice. His name is Theo. As a carpenter apprentice, I traveled from Windsor to Timmins, Ontario for several months in order to work at construction projects in remote parts of Northern Ontario. I spent thousands of dollars of my money on gas, food, and hotels, and I was not able to get any assistance for. I also put a lot of kilometers on my car in this time, and it wore out and depreciated a lot, which affected my ability to get ahead. I gave up a lot of time from family and friends in order to work. There is a lot of work opportunities in remote parts of Canada, and a tax deduction of travel expenses would help apprentices like myself to travel to better work opportunities. I love the word opportunities. I hope that this bill passes and that all members of this Parliament support Bill C-241. Another one, Madam Speaker. Canada provides excellent opportunities for construction workers on projects that are often far away from places they call home. Canada has been built by skilled tradespeople that have left families and communities to travel to work to opportunities on projects that may not be available close to home. Canada is experiencing record labor shortages, and it is crucial that Canada's assets with the workforce mobility removes the barriers to travel that currently exist. And that one was from Tommy Hulkinen, and he's the president of the Essex and Kent Building and Construction Trades Council. And he did go on to say, Madam Speaker, please note that the Carpenters Union, Local 494, fully endorses this bill as well as is willing and able to speak on this bill if asked if it goes to committee. This was a cool one. So, do we have a labor shortage in this country? I say, and this is another gentleman, his name is Russ, I say we currently have a shortage of political will for fairness and mobility for the Canadian skilled worker. Today, all of this can change if you vote yes to support the Canadian skilled worker in this non-bipartisan bill, which I fully stand behind and support. Your constituents have elected you to do the right thing for this country and contribute to our society, both ethically and morally. We are not asking for a payday or a handout. All we are asking for is fairness. Our country can have the skilled workers needed if the shackles regarding mobility can be released for the Canadian skilled worker. Just a couple more, Madam Speaker. Jarrett is an electrician from Windsor with 2 young boys, has been forced to travel across Canada, leaving his home province of Ontario in order to provide for his family. If the stress of being away from home isn't enough to deal with, Madam Speaker, imagine not being around to guide your children while they were growing up. With all that added outside pressure, it would only be sensible to allow construction workers dealing with the same issues to be able to write off their travel expenses. Peter, the Executive Director of the Construction Labour Relations Association of Manitoba, Madam Speaker, says, you well know all major infrastructure construction projects in Manitoba's history have always relied on workers traveling from one province to supplement Manitoba's skilled tradespersons labour supply. The same can be said for every province across Canada. Promoting mobility by eliminating the current travel expenses for our construction trade workers is simply sound economic policy with a strong sprinkling of common sense. On behalf of the many construction contractor employers that I represent, I am dedicated to working with you and Russ and others who will support this critical and timely national incentive. Madam Speaker, I could continue on with more testimonial, but I know that my time is coming short. Madam Speaker, as we heard today in this House, the price of fuel, the price of hotels, the price of food, inflation, and all of this lies on the backs of the very tradesfolks that are building, have built, continue to, and will be the builders of this country in the future. To put that extra burden on them, Madam Speaker, is absolutely unfair. This is a fair bill, Madam Speaker, that leaves money in the pockets of the tradespersons and gives back to the skilled trades, a trade that has been walked past for many years, been quite frankly ignored, but expected to travel across Canada to build our bridges, to build our roads, to build the homes that we all know that we have a major shortage of in this country, to keep our electric system moving. Madam Speaker, this really should be, I suppose, a no-brainer, at the very, very least to send it to committee to be studied, Madam Speaker. The neat thing about this bill, Madam Speaker, is it literally covers tradesfolks from coast to coast to coast, from St. John's, Newfoundland, across Canada. It doesn't just help one area, it helps the entire country. And I suppose, Madam Speaker, if it looks like I'm kind of smiling a little bit today, it's because I'm kind of excited to introduce the PMB. But the second reason I'm smiling, Madam Speaker, is we have a major opportunity to do something huge for Canadians, for our skilled trades force, to truly give them the support that they not only deserve, but they need going forward. And as my time comes to an end, Madam Speaker, the last 2 things I would leave is this. I suppose if there was ever a time for all parties to come together and become completely bipartisan, and just know that what we're doing is right. And yes, it can be studied, but know what we're doing is right. That kind of puts a smile on my face, and I'll leave you the one last thought, Madam Speaker. I don't know of any member in this place that doesn't either get expensed or reimbursed for or can write off their travel expenses. And if it's good enough for members of Parliament, then it should darn well be good enough for the trades folks. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Niagara. Niagara Centre.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, fellas. Madam Speaker, a quick question with respect to the presentation given today, and I do appreciate the presentation. Great work, and I do support the direction that you're taking this, and I'm hoping to see this go to committee. Quick question. You mentioned here about travel.
Anything?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Quick question to the member. With respect to, you mentioned about travel. How about tools? We have a maximum deduction for tools that's listed under CRA. Is there any thought given to adding to this PMB to include not only travel, but as well the tools of the trade? And that can be anything from the big vehicles, machines, all the way down to the hammer and the screwdrivers and things that tradespeople use on a daily basis. Is there any thought given to actually include that in this PMB?
The honourable member for Essex.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and through you to the honourable member. Thank you, sir, for the question. You know, it's ironic that you bring that up because that's been brought up to me a number of times in my discussions here over the last, couple of years, so to speak, and they've asked for that. The truth of the matter is, although I'm a person that loves to ask for the world, I was trying to keep it simplified to get something passed to help them out. By all means, when it goes to committee, if you'd like to make a suggestions for that, I'm all ears. Whatever we can do to help them, to move that the trades forward, I'm all about that. So thank you very much for the question. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Jonesy, come on.
Questions and comments?
For Hamilton Centre.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And indeed, the honourable member is in good form today. He seemed very excited to present this bill. In fact, he sounded very much like a New Democrat, and I'll tell you why, Madam Speaker. Take that back. I'll tell you why, because it's been New Democrats since 2006 who first introduced this bill under Chris Charlton, and again in 2008, and again in 2013, and again in 2021, and in fact, my PMB is very much like this. So through you, Madam Chair, to the honourable member, who's been in such good form with strong New Democratic talking points, why is it that the honourable member, in determining the distance, made it a further distance of 120 kilometres rather than the 80 kilometres that we have prescribed year and year again?
The honourable member for Essex.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the honourable member. And yes, sir. Yes, yes, honourable member. I'm sorry. I heard somebody say, "Why did I make it from 80 to 120?" And somebody said inflation. That's why I couldn't help it, Madam Speaker. Listen, Madam Speaker. At the end of the day, it goes like this. I'm open to discussion at committee. I'm open to ideas. Why did I think 120? Well, typically speaking, depending on where you live, some of us have access to a major artery, a major highway. Some of us don't. And so the 120 thought in my brain was about an hour and a half from home, which seems to me, Madam Speaker, as though if I'm an hour and a half from home, that's 3 hours of travel every single day. I'm probably going to want to stay out of town. But, Madam Speaker, if I can get the support of the NDP, heck, I'll even call myself an NDP for one day for that. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments. The honourable member for Order. The honourable member for Pierre Boucher, les Patriotes Verchères. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, I don't have a question for my colleague. Rather, I'd like to congratulate him because, often people criticize bills that they don't like, but when there are bills that are good, I think we have to highlight that. And so I should note that it's very nice to see that this Conservative MP is ready to defend the rights of workers, and so I'll be happy to work with them on this bill, and I'll speak more to that in my speech in a few moments. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Essex.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much, my honourable colleague. I know there's no question, but it certainly sounds as though there is at least an appetite, potentially a flavor here, to move it forward. So that means a lot to my honourable colleague, and thank you, Madam Speaker.
For Chatham-Kent, Leamington.
And I want to thank my honourable colleague and indeed my neighbour and congratulate him for introducing this private member's bill. We've talked a lot in this House about labour shortages. It's a no-brainer to link a potential change here to addressing that. So I want to give my honourable neighbour the opportunity to comment about how he feels the impact of this bill would play out on labour shortages, particularly in the trade sector, but indeed, and help our whole construction and other industries.
Honourable Member for Essex in 10 seconds.
10 seconds. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you to my honourable member from Chatham-Kent, Leamington, and my neighbour and my friend. There's our ridings matching up. It's a huge envelope of opportunity for local trades, and I know it's going to be beneficial. Thanks, Madam Speaker.
Resuming debate, the Honourable Member for Halifax West.
Merci beaucoup, Madame.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. It's always a pleasure and a great honor and a privilege to rise in this House on behalf of the people of Halifax West.
And a pleasure and an honor to rise here on behalf of the residents of Halifax West. And I'm pleased today to rise to debate Bill C-241. And the total name of it is Enact to amend the Income Tax Act, Deduction of Travel Expenses for Tradespeople. I want to thank my colleague for bringing this important issue forward. We committed in our platform to move forward with introducing a labor mobility tax credit to allow workers in the building and construction trades to deduct certain eligible travel and temporary relocation expenses and to give them a tax credit on a yearly basis. And I'm proud of that commitment, and I do hope to see progress on it soon. I want to take this opportunity today, though, to reiterate the great value of the skilled trades for Canadians. Skilled trades workers literally build our cities, homes, and communities. They master their craft, upgrade their skills, train the next generation of their trade, and help fill our labor gaps while providing for their families. Nous pensons que pour aider...
We believe that to help fight the labor shortage in the trades and to help small businesses continue to develop, we need to invest in our tradespeople by providing them tax breaks on travel undertaken in the context of their work.
To continually champion and highlight skilled trades and the wide variety of career options that are in high demand, we need people of all backgrounds to choose these to fuel our economic growth and recovery. The people of my communities in Halifax West know that very well, with all the new construction in our cities and in our neighborhoods. Madame le Président, there are...
Madam Speaker.
Encourage people to enter the skilled trades. We can use our place in public life to highlight the value of the trades. We can make it easy to learn how to get into a trade. We can provide appropriate supports for those who want to pursue training, and we can invest to improve and expand the opportunities available, including for underrepresented groups of Canadians who should also see a future for themselves in the skilled trades. Our government, I'm proud to say, is doing just that, and I will note that this is work that I was so proud to be involved in during my time as Nova Scotia's Provincial Minister of Labour and Advanced Education as well. To highlight the value of skilled trades workers and the supports available to build a successful and fulfilling career in the trades, our government recently launched an advertising campaign to promote the skilled trades as first-choice careers for young people in diverse populations. The campaign website, canada.ca/skilled trades, provides Canadians with information about what the skilled trades are, how to become a tradesperson, and what financial supports are available to them while in training. And 2 years ago, we announced the Canadian Apprenticeship Strategy, which paved the way for a new apprenticeship service. It will help first-year apprentices in eligible Red Seal trades get the hands-on experience they need for a career in the skilled trades. I also know firsthand from my days as a provincial minister of the great support and funding the Government of Canada provides to provinces and territories to help them raise awareness about careers in the trades. Madame la Présidente, our government is investing nearly $1 billion annually in apprenticeship supports through grants and contributions, loans, tax credits, employment insurance benefits during in-school training, project funding, and support for the Red Seal program. That's a major investment, and part of that is programs like the Union Training and Innovation Program. Last week, I visited the Building Trades Advancement College in my riding to announce funding through that program to 2 local skilled trade unions. In fact, they brought forward this bill to me, and therefore that's why I'm rising today and happily speak on it. So I was there with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, District Council 39, and the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 625. I was fortunate to see firsthand how federal dollars were being put to work securing the equipment and materials that our skilled trades workers need to upgrade their skills and train the next generation of workers. This included a spider crane, a scissor lift, electric conduit benders, and many other pieces of equipment and training station that this funding helped provide. That's one of many ways we support our skilled tradespeople and their livelihoods. All this to say that I will use my position here to stand up for the skilled trades, advocate for skilled trade workers, and help to celebrate the trades generally to those considering what to do with their future. So in addressing the bill today, we all know that the nature of the construction industry requires skilled trades workers to travel to project locations as they arise. Sometimes there isn't enough work locally, and travel is a necessity to pay the mortgage and put food on the table. The people of my province and my region understand that necessity well, although I have to note how far we've come in terms of our success, growing our own local economies and giving people the opportunity to stay and earn a living in our own communities. Madam Speaker, when tradespeople have to travel to work and when expenses are not covered by their employer, they have to pay out of pocket for their travel expenses, and those costs can run high and at times make it prohibitively expensive to travel for a work opportunity. In fact, Canada's Building Trades Union reports that 70% of building trades workers have had to pay out of pocket for work-related travel expenses. For other Canadians, the Income Tax Act allows for a tax deduction for the cost of their travel, meals, accommodation when traveling for work. However, currently that option is not available to skilled trades workers who work on job sites in different regions or provinces from their primary residence. And I think that's a discrepancy that calls for a policy solution. The status quo effectively penalizes people who are willing, ready, and able to work, and who we need to build up our infrastructure, improve housing supply, address local labor shortages, and support our recovery. So we have an opportunity to correct that here and to put more money in the pockets of workers. So this type of support is something that skilled trades workers support. It's one of many ways we can make working in the skilled trades more attractive. Madam Speaker, in debating this bill, I do have a few questions, though, and some of them may have been raised in the questions leading up to this. But first, the bill would allow tradespeople and indentured apprentices to deduct from their income amounts expended for traveling where they were employed in a construction activity at a job site that is located at least 120 kilometers away from their ordinary place of business. That distance is greater than some other proposed minimum distances, and it certainly is greater than the one proposed by Canada's building trade unions. And so I look forward to receiving more detail on the rationale or thinking that was used in selecting that number. Secondly, I note that the bill does not contain precise definitions, perhaps most notably of traveling expenses, and I think we need to see greater clarity here because we know workers don't just end up paying for their transportation, they sometimes have to pay for accommodations, meal, etc. And so I look forward to more clarity on that. Next, I note that the bill does not include safeguards to contain its scope and cost. For example, there's no minimum period of relocation and no cap on the number of trips or on the amount of expenses that can be deducted in a year. And I look forward as well to that when it comes to committee and hearing testimony from witnesses and so on to get a bit more clarity on that part of the bill as well. So, Madam Speaker, overall, I do appreciate what the member's bill is trying to achieve. Providing skilled trades workers with tax relief for the necessary travel that they must do for work is an important step that we can and must take. And I expect that our government will move forward with a new labor mobility tax credit for workers in the building and construction industry, and that would be an additional tool to support our hard-working tradespeople. Thank you very much, and I look forward to this bill when it comes to committee. Merci.
Prise du débat.
Resuming debate, the Honourable Member for Pierre Boucher, Les Patriotes Verchères. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to speak to the Bloc Québécois' position on Bill C-241, as tabled by my colleague, the member for Essex. This is an interesting bill, as I said earlier, and, you know, often when we talk about a bill, people say, oh, my goodness, it's going to be huge. It's going to take a long time to go through it and try to understand everything that's in it. And so people are often worried about that. But I think in this case, I think we can take some time to look at the details of this bill because it's only about a page long. And sometimes when a bill is short, that means that it's efficient. It means we can have a good look at it. So this would amend the Income Tax Act to allow tradespersons and apprentices who need to spend a fair bit of money to travel a fair distance to their work, that they would be able to deduct that from their income from the work. And I think it's an interesting idea. And so if we look more specifically at this, it would modify Subsection 8.1 of the Income Tax Act. And if you look at the details, it says that where the taxpayer was employed as a duly qualified tradesperson or an indentured apprentice in a construction activity at a job site that was located at least 120 kilometers away from their ordinary place of residence. And so obviously the expenses would have to be linked to travel to that workplace. And so the tradesperson would also have to have been required to some extent to have spent that money to go to their workplace, and obviously would not have been reimbursed by their employer. So at first glance, all of this certainly makes sense, and that's why the Bloc Québécois intends to vote in favor of Bill C-241. This bill has been recommended by the trades unions in Canada. So this is something that the union movement has been looking for, and it's important to note that. It's unusual to see a Conservative MP table a bill that the unions are happy with. So, when we see something like that go by, we have to jump on it. Now, this is something that could affect millions of workers. But if we look specifically at Quebec, and of course, obviously in the Bloc Québécois, this is particularly what we want to look at. This would affect especially the construction sector, but certainly some other sectors, but particularly the construction sector. That's 1 in 20 jobs in Quebec. So that's a lot of people who, through this bill, would, in theory, be able to deduct some of their expenses linked to their travel to a workplace to a building site that's far away from their home. And I think they would be very happy to see something like this move forward. And so I mentioned that it was 1 in 20 jobs in Quebec. That's 260,000 people. So that's a lot of people. And it's important to note here that this isn't something that's come out of nowhere. There are people, other colleagues who mentioned earlier, that parliamentarians are able to deduct their travel expenses, their meal expenses, and their housing expenses when they travel. So we benefit from this. So it would not be very nice of us to say, well, we can benefit from this, but others cannot. That would be a very strange message to send. But there are others who might want similar treatments. There are traveling salespeople. There are others who benefit from similar measures, but these measures are not available right now to tradespeople. And it's strange to say that, we're in 2022 and these things aren't available. When you think about it, there are work sites that are, hundreds of kilometers away from where people live. And there are two cases that I can mention specifically, two cases in my family. My two grandfathers were tradespeople. My paternal grandfather was a plumber, and he worked on job sites for years. He worked on the Olympic Stadium. He worked on military bases, office towers, and he didn't have the right to claim these kinds of deductions when he worked as a plumber. And I'm sure he would have appreciated it because when you go to work on a work site that's quite a long way from your home, you don't see your family for hours and hours or days and days in some cases. And to have to add that kind of spending to get to your work site on top of all that, well, that's something that, is discouraging. It would discourage you in some cases for wanting to go to work. So, in certain markets, there may be people who will say that, oh, yeah, I need this job. I'll travel 200 kilometers a day and I'll pay for the gas, because I need the work. But, there's a question of fairness here as well, because these people, it costs them a lot of money to be able to do their jobs. So, that's not something that is reflected in every contract. For example, there are certain employers who, yes, are going to provide the housing. For example, there are others who will pay the mileage. But not everybody will do that. And for those where it's not the case, well, I think we need to give them that opportunity. And I talked about my grandfather, that maybe back in the day, that would have allowed him to travel to work sites that were further away than what he was able to do because, he, again, wanted to stay not too far from his house. But I can mention my other grandfather on the maternal side, who was also a tradesperson, who worked on the lines, and he worked for Hydro-Quebec a long way from home. I think he worked on every dam that we built in Quebec. And, this is something that could be good, not just for people who leave from the big cities to go and work in rural areas where we need more workers, and often there are big work sites in rural areas. You might need 5,000 or 10,000 workers at a time. That's not always easy to find. But in the big cities, there might be more workers that you could find. But on the other hand, people who live in rural areas who want to be able to stay in their regions but who want to have access to jobs or contracts in the major cities, well, they have to take their travel into account, and that's something that would prevent them from staying in rural areas or in the regions. So I think that this measure is good for everybody, both workers from rural areas and workers in the big cities. It's good for big projects and smaller projects, and obviously with big projects, you need to go a bit faster, so maybe it'll be a bit more visible in those cases.
Donc, évidemment, on a parlé de ça, mais on pourrait aussi parler qu'à ce moment, on est dans un contexte de pénurie de main-d'œuvre. Donc, dans un contexte de pénurie de main-d'œuvre, où il y a une...
Right now, there is a labor shortage. There are not enough workers. And sometimes in the regions, people think they would like to hire, but they just can't find people. So in those cases, it may take even longer to start, or things may just not happen at all. So having this additional incentive here would mean that people, thanks to this tax deduction, people who might not have taken the job, but they might decide to take it. They might decide to go because now financially it makes sense. It's a little bit of help, and it recognizes the expenses that people need to take on the job. So right now with the labor shortage, this is a factor because we need people, we need workers, and we need to encourage people to take on jobs. And we might also want to think about, well, I mentioned people who may have to go far away from their families, people who may go far away for long periods of time. And so that's already a major sacrifice. People who are missing out on time with their families. So getting that little bit of help, a little bit of support, it compensates them for having to move to go long distances for their jobs. And we can think that in the States, for example, elsewhere in the world, for example, the States, something similar is done, and the States has a similar market to ours, and that's the way it works there. So I don't see why we wouldn't do it. And something else we need to take into account is the matter of inflation. We've been talking about inflation quite a lot recently. There's a great deal of inflation. Prices are going up. And when you think about it, we all know that groceries are costing more, that restaurants and all sorts of things cost more right now because hospitality businesses that took on debt during the pandemic now need to hike their prices in order to be able to pay back their debt. Or they won't be able to keep their head above water. And we know that hotels, hospitality, and of course fuel, gas has gone up a lot. So there's all those things. So if we could help workers with these types of costs, that would be a real plus. Thank you.
Debate, the honourable member for Hamilton Centre.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And I rise again. I feel the need to begin my comments by recapitulating the words of the honourable member from Essex, who shared that he would happily call himself a New Democrat to get this PMB passed, if even just for a day. And I'm glad it's on the Hansard. I'm glad it's on the Hansard, Madam Speaker, because as I had shared in my question to the honourable member from Essex, the New Democratic Party has been on the Hansard on this very bill 5 times since 2006.
That's right.
And I'm going to take a moment to recapitulate. In 2006, Bill C-390 under the always honourable Chris Charlton. Again, in 2008, C-227 introduced by the honourable Chris Charlton. 2013, Bill C-201, again, Chris Charlton. And when Chris Charlton retired, she handed it over to a working class hero from Hamilton, the always honourable Scott Duvall, who introduced this same bill, C-275. Madam Speaker, I had the honour, being from Hamilton, to continue the working class values of our city and our party by introducing Bill C-222. And the honourable member from Essex was in fine form, using his newly found New Democratic talking points to sell this very bill in this House. And I give the honourable member from Essex the benefit of the doubt, because the honourable member from Essex was not elected in 2014 when this bill was last introduced under Bill C-201. That when it was up for vote in second reading, it was the Conservative Party with a majority that crushed this bill.
That's right.
We've had 15 years of work on this bill. We've had 6 where the working class people of this country could have benefited from these types of tax considerations. And so the honourable member is quite right when he says he wants for working class people what we have in this House as MPs when it comes to writing off some of our travel expenses. And I would go one step further, Madam Speaker, and I would suggest that all MPs in this House ought to carry the same spirit by wanting for others what we ourselves have in here when it comes to dental care and pharmacare and pensions.
Hear, hear.
And so here we are. The challenge we have, Madam Speaker, is that the newly found New Democrat, in his New Democratic talking points, you could tell the disconnect that he actually has with the building trades, because the example that he gave in his answer, Madam Speaker, with relating to the distance, using his county of Essex, suggesting that an hour and a half travel is about 120 kilometers, tells you that he has never spoken to skilled tradespeople in Southern Ontario. Because if he had, he'd know that people from Hamilton could sit in traffic for 3 hours just on their way to Toronto, 60 kilometers away. So he's quite right that skilled tradespeople who have fought for this over decades, and let's be clear, he was right when he says this is a bipartisan, a nonpartisan issue. This isn't a win for the Conservatives who found their new working class values under their previous leader. I'll remind them, though, that their previous leader in 2014 from Durham did vote against this, as did their interim leader, as did the honourable member from Carleton. All of them voted against this. So why now? Well, I would put to you it's because the Conservative Party uses working class issues and working class people in the same way that one would use a pair of old dirty sneakers. They only bring them out when it's time to cut the grass, to pretend that the grass is green on the other side, when it's clear that this bill comes up short by lengthening that distance and excluding so many people from areas like my city and Hamilton Centre. So I'm going to take my time, but I'm going to give credit to where credit is due, which is in the organized labor of the Ontario Building Trades Council, of the Canadian Building Trades Council, of the Hamilton and Brantford Building Trades Council, the people that I work with. People like Pat Dillon, who for his entire career worked on this for 20 years and in fact was successful under their previous leader to have this implemented into darn near all the platforms. Following in the spirit of the New Democratic Party, we saw willingness from the government side to finally give lip service to this. Why they failed to act on it till now is beyond me. But in the spirit of moving things forward to improve the material conditions of working class people in this country, I am happy we're here. Our parliament works better when we work together, working for working class people.
You're here.
So to Pat Dillon, in your retirement, Pat, where I suspect many members from all parties showed up to honor you in that moment, let today be your victory. Let future votes on this, when hopefully we get to a place where this bill, covers all the aspects that it needs to cover, let this be your victory. Let this be the victory of Mark Elliker, who from the Hamilton Brantford Building Trades Council I've had the privilege of working with since my time as a city councillor, who has always fought with the building trades, not just for organized labor, but for unorganized labor too. Because the notion that what's good for the manager or the salesperson in their tax considerations absolutely must be a tax fairness question that is applied to all working class people, whether it's their travel expenses or their tools, which was a very appropriate point brought up by the government side. I encourage the government side to bring these types of real considerations for working class people into their legislations, into their throne speeches, and most importantly, into their budget. Lastly, I want to thank my good friend once again, Stuart McClellan, from IBEW, Local 105, who we would have long conversations with about having the ability for workers to travel where they don't have to do the calculus, because the truth is, not all collective agreements have within it these travel expenses. The ones that don't, it limits them. They have to go out of pocket. And let's be clear about one thing. It's not MPs. It's not entrepreneurs. It's not the CEOs or the big developers that create value in this country. Value in this economy is only built by working class people. It is taken by the ultra wealthy. So in this respect, when we talk about those members who are being considered in this space, and you talk about how 120 kilometers might look like an hour and a half to you, sit in traffic from Hamilton to Toronto, sit in traffic from Montreal to anywhere for that matter, and know that that travel time, it's not just a tax expense that you can write off, it's time away from your family. It's a sacrifice that you have to make as a worker in order to put bread and food on your table to pay your rent. Let's get this bill right. Let's get this bill right for Pat. Let's get this bill right for Mark and Stuart and all of the incredible working class people across this country who truly put value in this economy, who truly build this country. So with that, to my temporary and honorary member of the New Democratic Party, I congratulate him on his private member's bill, and I am happy to stand and see that be reflected in the answer today. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Resuming debate, the honourable member for Northumberland, Peterborough South.
Bravo! Well, I have tremendous respect for the member from Hamilton Centre, so please take this in the good spirit it's intended there. That was the angriest agreement I've ever seen in my life. But I know it comes from a great sense of deep passion from that member, so we appreciate his support and look forward to discussions on committee to, if we can improve this bill, obviously we will. A couple of notes. I'd just like to thank the deputy speakers for filling in for the speaker, and like to wish the speaker all the best going forward as his public health struggles, are public, and where our thoughts and prayers are with the speaker, and we know he'll pull out strong and continue to be a great speaker in our House. So I'd like to enter into the substance of our discussion today, and that's Bill C-241, put forward by my friend and the honourable colleague from Essex. And I'd like to start out by saying he's extremely well raised. He's got two great parents, in Kim and Helen, and so a shout out to his parents, because without them we wouldn't have Chris. Oh, I can't say his name. Member of Essex, and we wouldn't have this legislation. So thank you very much, Helen and Kim. Let's talk about Bill C-241. And I want to start out by just putting in some context before this legislation. We are, I think it's undoubted, facing an affordability crisis. This is one of the chief motivations or the drivers of this affordability crisis is the inflation that we have in place. And what we really have is an inflation tax. We are actually in the midst of one of the largest tax increases in Canadian history, because what has happened is through spending, both necessary and unnecessary, and increasing spending going forward, we've run greater and greater deficits. In fact, deficits larger than we can finance without the help of the Bank of Canada. And through the Bank of Canada, they've put over $400 billion into our economy. And so it's a basic axiom of economics that where you have more of something, in this case, $400 billion worth of it more, it devalues it. And that has the effect of increasing the price on everything else. So Canadians across this country are facing an affordability crisis. Then you add on top of that the carbon tax, which I had the privilege of asking the Governor of Bank of Canada, what was the inflationary impact of the carbon tax? Strangely, he didn't know the answer right off the top of his head, something I would have thought he would have been aware of. But he was kind enough to provide a written response, where he said, Madam Speaker, that fully 10% of the inflation that we are facing today is because of the carbon tax. So it's in that context I'd like to discuss Bill C-241. Everyone is facing challenges, and perhaps none more than the workers, the people that the member from Hamilton Centre spoke so eloquently about. Those folks who are struggling up, sometimes the bottom rungs of the economic ladder, struggling to hang on and hoping to get up to that next level, to get to the middle class. And so when we look at Bill C-241, it's those people, amongst others, that this legislation is going to help. So what does it do? Well, it puts skilled trades employees on equal footings as giant corporations, as self-employed individuals, and allows them to deduct the expenses associated with travel to their job sites, which are required. This is the exact same treatment that a corporation would receive if they paid for this travel. They would get to deduct this expense. However, through an oversight, and that's what I'll call it generously, tradespeople have been disadvantaged, and they don't get that same right. When we look at this, tradespeople, as we've said, are literally building our community brick by brick. They are the ones that are putting in the HVAC systems. They're the electricians that are wiring our world. Literally, we would be in the dark without them, in the dark and the cold, without their skilled trades. So why should we be disadvantaging them? We need more skilled trades. As a member from Essex said, we will need a minimum of 350,000 new skilled tradespeople just in Ontario alone in order to meet the growing demand and the need. We need to attract more people to this field. And it's great work, but it's hard work. And part of the work is often there's not a standard office you go to. You don't go to the same place to work every day because once the building is built, it's built. And it's time to move on to that new project. And that's often not located right next to your house. You don't have the option to relocate right next to that house. So we've got individuals, tradespeople, which we increasingly need more of. We've got people who are salt of the earth, working every day to build our community. And what have we done to them? We've disadvantaged them economically. Just because the way that they choose to arrange the legal status of their work relationship. So if they chose to be self-employed, they could deduct it. As an employee, they could not. That's the very definition of inequity. And with my time left, I'd like to go over a couple of stories. And one of them is Mitch. Mitch is a young electrician's apprentice doing a great job wiring commercial buildings all over the province of Ontario. He's currently living in his parents' house, in his parents' basement, because he can't afford a house because the cost of housing has doubled. When I talked to him about this legislation, he said this would be fantastic because at $1.70, driving 200 or 300 kilometers away from his house every day, his parents' house, it's quite expensive, and he's not able to save for a house. This might give him the opportunity to do so. So that's the type, we're going to make a difference in people's lives. I'd like to talk to you about Tommy. He's an HVAC apprentice. He's working forward to gain that experience. He wants to gain his red seal. And he said to me, you know what, I drive 150 kilometers to work, and I don't mind it because hustling, hard work, that's what our country was built on, and I know that's what I have to do to get ahead. But with a recent change in gas prices and the expenses of life, he's close to losing hope because he's not establishing the goals that he sought out for himself. And it's not his fault. He's working hard. He's doing what we've all told him to do. It's just the price of everything has gotten so expensive. And so this is a break for Tommy, and Tommy's excited about this legislation going forward. The other individual I'd like to talk about is Dennis Federoni. He's the owner of Fed Air. He has a commercial HVAC company in the wonderful town or city of Vaughan, and he does HVAC all over the province. And so the gas bills for his employees are absolutely astronomical. And so he's asking for a break, not so much for himself, which certainly he would appreciate. It would allow him to hire more people, bring more skilled people into his business, but for his employees who are struggling to get by. When we look at this, and I'm really pleased by the fact that it appears as though nearly all of the parties are signaling their support for this legislation, which I think is terrific. This is a common sense solution. This is an area where politics shouldn't get involved. We shouldn't be looking at parties, whether you're NDP, Conservative, or Liberal. I deeply believe that every one of the 338 of us want to do what's right. We want to do what's best for the Canadians and Canadian workers. So I thank this House. I look forward to this legislation getting to committee. And once again, I thank Helen and Kim for raising such a great son. Thanks, guys.
The time provided for the consideration of private members' business has now